March 15, 1943. Ministry of Armaments, Berlin. Karl Friedag, production manager for Messerschmitt Aircraft, sits in a conference room with 30 other factory managers and ministry officials. They've been summoned by Albert Speer, Reich Minister of Armaments. The meeting's purpose is classified. Armed guards stand at the doors. No one is permitted to leave until the briefing concludes. Friedag has worked in aviation for 20 years. He knows Germany's production numbers. He's proud of them. German factories built 15,288 aircraft in 1942, nearly double the 1941 output. Production is accelerating. The Luftwaffe is growing stronger. Victory is achievable. Then Speer stands. He's holding a thin folder marked, Streng Geheim, top secret. His face is grim. He opens the folder and begins reading. Intelligence reports from neutral sources. Switzerland, Sweden, Spain, all confirming the same impossible numbers. American aircraft production in 1942, 47,836 aircraft. Soviet production, 25,436 aircraft. British production, 23,672 aircraft. Combined Allied production, 96,944 aircraft. Nearly 97,000 aircraft in a single year. Friedag's mind struggles with the numbers. Germany's 15,000 seems respectable until placed beside America's 47,000. But it gets worse. Speer continues. Projections for 1943. American production estimated at 85,000 aircraft. Soviet production, 35,000. British production, 26,000. Total Allied projection, 146,000 aircraft. Germany's projection, 25,000. Maybe 30,000 if everything goes perfectly. The room is silent. The mathematics is brutal and undeniable. The Allies are building aircraft at a rate 5-1 over Germany. 5-1. Even accounting for quality differences, even assuming German aircraft are superior, which Speer quietly notes they increasingly aren't, the numbers don't lie. Germany is being buried under an avalanche of enemy production. And there's nothing they can do about it. This is the moment when intelligent Germans, the factory managers and engineers who understood production, realized the war was lost. Not lost on the battlefield. Not lost because of one defeat or one setback. Lost because of mathematics. Lost because America's industrial capacity was so vast that Germany couldn't compete. Lost because while Germany was proud of doubling its aircraft production, America had quintupled its production and was still accelerating. This is the story of how production won the war. Not courage, not tactics, not even technology. Production. The ability to build weapons faster than the enemy could destroy them. The ability to replace losses while the enemy couldn't. The ability to overwhelm through sheer numbers. America mastered this. Germany never could. And once German officials saw the real numbers, once they understood the scale of what they faced, many knew the war was over. They would fight for 2 more years, but the outcome was determined by factories in Detroit and Seattle and Los Angeles, by production lines that never stopped, by an industrial system that Germany couldn't match and couldn't survive. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to 1940, when Germany seemed unstoppable and America seemed irrelevant. Germany had conquered France in 6 weeks. The Luftwaffe controlled European skies. German factories produced excellent aircraft. The Bf-109 fighter was among the world's best. The Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber terrified enemy ground forces. German production was efficient, organized, focused. Why worry about American production? America wasn't even in the war. And even if America entered, everyone knew Americans were soft, undisciplined, incapable of the total war Germany waged. This contempt for American industrial capacity was widespread in Germany. Hitler himself dismissed American production as propaganda. When German intelligence reported American aircraft production targets for 1942, Hitler called the reports ridiculous. 50,000 aircraft per year? Impossible. America built automobiles, not weapons. Americans were too comfortable, too democratic, too diverse to organize the massive industrial effort that aircraft production required. The reports must be wrong. Or they were lies, Allied propaganda designed to demoralize Germany. German factory managers, men like Friedag who actually understood production, were less dismissive. They knew America had enormous industrial capacity. They'd seen the statistics on American steel production, automobile production, electrical generation. America's economy dwarfed Germany's. But could America convert that economic strength into military production? Could a democracy, with its inefficiencies and debates and labor unions, organize for total war? German managers were skeptical. They believed Germany's centralized system, where the state directed all production, gave Germany decisive advantages. They were catastrophically wrong. American aircraft production in 1940 was modest. About 6,000 aircraft, most of them trainers and civilian models. America had no significant military aircraft industry. The Army Air Corps was small, underfunded, flying obsolete aircraft. When war broke out in Europe, President Roosevelt called for expanding American production, but Congress was reluctant. America was isolationist. Europe's wars weren't America's concern. Production increased slowly through 1940 and 1941. Then came Pearl Harbor. December 7, 1941. Japan attacked the American Pacific Fleet. America declared war. An American industry mobilized on a scale the world had never seen. Roosevelt set ambitious production targets. 60,000 aircraft in 1942. 125,000 in 1943. German intelligence officers, reading these numbers, laughed. Impossible. America might double or triple production, but 5-fold increases? 10-fold increases? That required miracles. Factories didn't appear overnight. Workers needed training. Supply chains had to be organized. It would take years. It took months. American automobile manufacturers, led by Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, converted assembly lines from cars to aircraft. The transition was remarkably smooth. Building aircraft isn't fundamentally different from building automobiles. Both require precision manufacturing, assembly line organization, quality control. American automakers had perfected these processes over decades. They applied the same principles to aircraft: standardization, interchangeable parts, division of labor. Assembly lines where each worker performed one simple task, repeated thousands of times. Ford built the Willow Run plant outside Detroit specifically to build B-24 Liberator bombers. The plant was the largest factory building in the world when completed in 1942. Over 3 million square feet under one roof. The assembly line was over a mile long. Raw materials entered at one end. Completed bombers rolled out the other end. At peak production, Willow Run completed one B-24 every 63 minutes. One bomber per hour. 24 hours a day. 365 days a year. German factory managers, if they'd been told about Willow Run's output, would have called it impossible. German aircraft were built by skilled craftsmen using traditional methods. Each aircraft was almost custom-built, with parts fitted individually. German production emphasized quality and precision. But quality takes time. Precision requires skill. Germany couldn't scale production without sacrificing what made German aircraft superior. America took the opposite approach. American aircraft were designed for mass production from the beginning. Parts were standardized. Tolerances were relaxed where precision wasn't critical. Designs were simplified to reduce manufacturing complexity. The result was aircraft that were good enough, built in quantities that overwhelmed any quality advantage. A German fighter might be 10% better than an American fighter. But if America built 5 fighters for every German fighter, the Americans won. The numbers tell the story. In 1942, America built 47,836 aircraft. Germany built 15,288. America built 3 times as many. But that ratio was about to get worse. Much worse. In 1943, American production would nearly double again, to 85,998 aircraft. German production would increase to 24,807. The ratio was now 3.5 to 1. And in 1944, the gap would become unbridgeable. American production, 96,318 aircraft. German production, 39,807. Still nearly 3 to 1, and that's with Germany running at maximum capacity, straining every resource, while America was building aircraft almost casually, one product among many. The March 1943 briefing where Speer revealed these numbers was devastating for those present. Friedag and his colleagues had been working impossible hours to increase production. They'd reorganized factories, streamlined processes, pushed workers to their limits. And they'd succeeded. German production was increasing every year. They'd been proud of their accomplishments. Then Speer showed them American numbers, and their pride turned to ash. It wasn't just aircraft. Speer had numbers for everything. Tank production. America, 24,997 tanks in 1942. Germany, 9,300. Artillery pieces. America, 69,000. Germany, 12,000. Trucks. America, 812,000. Germany, 146,000. The pattern was consistent across every category. American production was 3 to 6 times German production. And America was also supplying Britain, supplying the Soviet Union, supplying China. Lend-Lease meant American factories weren't just arming American forces but arming half the world's armies. The Soviet numbers made it even worse. Germany was fighting the Soviet Union on the Eastern Front. Soviet production was massive. 25,436 aircraft in 1942. 24,446 tanks. The Soviets were outproducing Germany while also fighting for survival. How was that possible? German intelligence had reported that Soviet industry was devastated, factories captured or destroyed, production capacity eliminated. Yet somehow, the Soviets were building more weapons than Germany. The answer was American aid. Lend-Lease supplied the Soviet Union with raw materials, machine tools, food, trucks, everything needed to keep Soviet factories running. American factories supplied goods the Soviets couldn't produce themselves, freeing Soviet capacity to focus on weapons. It was a brilliant division of labor. America built the trucks and jeeps. The Soviets built the tanks and aircraft. Together, their combined production dwarfed Germany's. Friedag, sitting in that conference room, understood immediately what the numbers meant. Germany was going to lose. Not might lose. Was going to lose. The only question was how long Germany could hold out before being crushed by superior numbers. Every German aircraft shot down would be replaced by 3 Allied aircraft. Every German tank destroyed would face 5 Allied tanks. Every German soldier killed represented training and equipment that couldn't be easily replaced, while the Allies had seemingly infinite reserves. The reasons for the production gap were complex. America's economy was larger, yes. But that alone didn't explain 5-to-1 ratios. The real differences were structural. America had never been bombed. American factories operated without fear of air raids. German factories, by 1943, were under constant attack. British bombers struck by night. American bombers struck by day. Production was disrupted. Workers were killed. Factories were destroyed faster than they could be rebuilt or dispersed. American factories had access to unlimited raw materials. Steel from American mines. Aluminum from American smelters. Oil from American wells. Rubber, after initial shortages, from synthetic plants. Germany was resource constrained. Oil was scarce, forcing compromises in aviation fuel quality. Aluminum was rationed. Steel production couldn't keep pace with demand. Every German aircraft required materials that could have built something else. Priorities constantly shifted. This month, build fighters. Next month, build bombers. The month after, build tanks. Production never achieved the steady rhythm that maximized efficiency. American workers were well-fed, well-paid, motivated. They worked long hours voluntarily, knowing their efforts supported troops overseas. German workers, by 1943, included slave laborers, prisoners of war, concentration camp inmates. These workers weren't motivated. They sabotaged production when possible. Quality suffered. German inspectors had to check everything multiple times, slowing production further. American factories used the latest machine tools and production technology. Automated processes reduced manual labor. Precision machines ensured parts fit properly. Assembly line organization minimized wasted motion. German factories, while using advanced technology in some areas, couldn't modernize comprehensively. Machine tools had to be imported or built domestically, and domestic production couldn't meet demand. Factories made do with older equipment, less automation, more manual processes. The result was that American factories achieved productivity levels German factories couldn't match. An American factory with 5,000 workers might produce as much as a German factory with 8,000 workers. Multiply those differences across hundreds of factories, and the production gap becomes insurmountable. Speer understood all of this. He'd been trying to reform German production since being appointed Minister of Armaments in 1942. He'd streamlined bureaucracy, consolidated production, eliminated redundant programs. Under his leadership, German production had increased significantly. But Speer was fighting systemic problems he couldn't solve. He couldn't conjure raw materials from nothing. He couldn't prevent Allied bombing. He couldn't eliminate the corruption and inefficiency built into the Nazi system. He could optimize around the edges, but the fundamental constraints remained. The March 1943 briefing was Speer's attempt to force German leadership to confront reality. The factory managers needed to understand what they faced. Some of them might need to communicate to higher leadership, perhaps even to Hitler, that the production war was lost. But Speer was also realistic. He knew Hitler wouldn't accept bad news. Hitler would blame sabotage, or traitors, or Jewish conspiracies. He wouldn't accept that America's industrial system was superior or that Germany simply couldn't compete. After the briefing, Friedag returned to his factory outside Munich. He said nothing to his workers about what he'd learned. Security forbade it. But his perspective had changed fundamentally. He'd been working to increase production, believing every additional aircraft made a difference. Now he knew it didn't matter. Germany could double or triple production, and it still wouldn't be enough. The Americans would just build more. This knowledge was paralyzing. Why work 80-hour weeks if the effort was futile? Why push workers to exhaustion for a cause that was lost? Friedag considered resigning, but that was impossible. Quitting was defeatism, punishable by death. He had a family to protect. So he continued, going through the motions, increasing production incrementally, knowing it was meaningless. Other factory managers reacted similarly. The March 1943 briefing created a class of Germans who knew the war was lost but couldn't say so. They continued their work because stopping meant death, but the motivation was gone. This quiet defeatism spread through German industry. It didn't manifest as active sabotage, which would be detected and punished. It manifested as lack of innovation, risk aversion, going through motions without real commitment. Meanwhile, American production continued accelerating. New factories opened continuously. Boeing's Seattle plants expanded. Douglas Aircraft in California grew. Consolidated Aircraft in San Diego. Lockheed in Burbank. North American Aviation in Los Angeles. Bell Aircraft in Buffalo. Republic Aviation in New York. Grumman on Long Island. Every major city had aircraft factories. Every factory was hiring. Want ads promised good wages for aircraft work. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, taking jobs traditionally reserved for men. Rosie the Riveter became an icon, representing millions of women building bombers and fighters. The aircraft these factories produced weren't perfect. Early models had problems. The B-24 Liberator, built by the thousands at Willow Run, was notoriously difficult to fly. The P-39 Airacobra, built by Bell, had performance issues that made it unpopular with American pilots. But problems were fixed through continuous improvement. Designs evolved. Manufacturing processes improved. By late 1943, American factories were building aircraft that were both numerous and good. The P-51 Mustang combined excellent performance with ease of manufacture. The B-17 Flying Fortress was reliable and survivable. American aircraft were no longer just numerous. They were competitive. German aircraft, meanwhile, were stagnating. The Bf-109, introduced in 1935, remained Germany's primary fighter throughout the war. It was updated continuously, but the basic design was 1930s vintage. The FW-190, introduced in 1941, was excellent but never fully replaced the 109. Germany developed advanced aircraft, jets like the Me-262, but production was limited. Complex designs couldn't be built in quantity with Germany's strained industrial base. The quality versus quantity debate haunted German planning. Should they build advanced aircraft in small numbers or simpler aircraft in larger numbers? German engineering culture favored quality. Every aircraft should be the best possible. But best possible meant complex, expensive, time-consuming to build. The Me-262 jet was revolutionary, but it required rare materials, skilled labor, and advanced manufacturing. Germany built about 1,400 Me-262s during the war. Impressive for a jet in the 1940s, but trivial compared to American production. America built over 15,000 P-51 Mustangs, a simpler but very effective fighter. The strategic implications were devastating. By late 1943, the Allies had achieved air superiority over Europe. German fighters couldn't defend German cities from bombing. There were never enough fighters, never enough pilots, never enough fuel. Allied bombers struck German factories, destroying production capacity. German aircraft destroyed by Allied fighters were replaced slowly or not at all. Every loss hurt Germany more than equivalent Allied losses hurt the Allies. The numbers Speer presented in March 1943 were projections for the full year. By December, when final numbers were compiled, the reality was even worse than projected. America had built 85,998 aircraft in 1943. Germany had built 24,807. The ratio was 3.5 to 1. Combined Allied production, including the Soviet Union and Britain, was 146,954 aircraft. Germany and its allies, including Japan and Italy, built about 36,000. 4 to 1. But raw numbers understated the gap. Allied aircraft were increasingly deployed to European and Mediterranean theaters. Pacific War needs were met while still overwhelming Germany with air power. German aircraft had to defend on multiple fronts with no strategic reserve. Every German fighter sent to the Eastern Front was unavailable to defend Germany from bombing. Every aircraft sent to the Mediterranean couldn't defend France from invasion. Germany was stretched impossibly thin, while the Allies had depth. The human cost of the production gap was immense. Luftwaffe pilots, flying outnumbered missions, died at unsustainable rates. Experienced pilots were killed and replaced by poorly trained novices who died even faster. By 1944, Luftwaffe pilot training had been reduced to minimal hours due to fuel shortages. New pilots entered combat with less than 100 hours of flight time. American pilots often had 300+ hours before seeing combat. The experience gap compounded the numerical gap. German factory workers, pushed to exhaustion, saw their efforts consumed by Allied bombing. Factories they'd rebuilt were bombed again. Production they'd struggled to achieve was destroyed faster than it was created. The futility was demoralizing. Absenteeism increased. Productivity declined. The production spiral turned downward. Friedag witnessed this firsthand. His factory was bombed in July 1943. Production stopped for 2 weeks while damage was repaired. Workers were killed. Morale collapsed. When production resumed, output was lower than before despite working longer hours. The workers knew aircraft they built would be destroyed, either in combat or in the next bombing raid. Why hurry? Why sacrifice? The war was lost. This knowledge, spreading through German industry, became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Production suffered because workers believed production was futile. Leadership couldn't inspire effort toward a goal everyone knew was impossible. The system ground down under the weight of its own contradictions. American production, meanwhile, operated with confidence and momentum. Workers knew they were winning. Every aircraft built brought victory closer. This positive feedback loop enhanced productivity. Innovations were implemented quickly. Problems were solved cooperatively. The entire system functioned smoothly because everyone believed in the mission. The industrial contrast mirrored the strategic contrast. America fought the war it wanted to fight, using its strengths, industrial capacity, and technological innovation. Germany fought the war it had to fight, trying to compensate for structural weaknesses through determination and skill. Determination and skill helped, but they couldn't overcome 5-to-1 production ratios. Eventually, numbers mattered more than quality. By 1944, the production gap was insurmountable. American aircraft production peaked at 96,318. German production reached 39,807, the highest of the war, achieved by stripping resources from every other sector. Even at maximum effort, Germany built less than half what America built, while building far less of everything else. Tanks, trucks, artillery, ships, all suffered so aircraft production could be maximized. And still it wasn't enough. The March 1943 briefing where Freytag learned the truth had parallels across German industry. Other briefings revealed Allied tank production, artillery production, ship production. Every briefing told the same story. The Allies were outproducing Germany by margins that made victory impossible. Some German officials, like Speer, tried to communicate this reality to Hitler. Hitler refused to listen. He believed willpower could overcome material disadvantage. He was wrong. The production numbers became a secret shared among Germany's industrial and military leadership. They knew, even when they couldn't say it publicly, that the war was lost. This created a strange dynamic. Publicly, everyone maintained confidence. Privately, everyone knew the truth. Decisions were made with the knowledge that Germany was slowly being crushed but with the pretense that victory remained possible. This cognitive dissonance contributed to increasingly irrational strategic decisions as Germany's situation deteriorated. Freytag survived the war. His factory was bombed repeatedly but never completely destroyed. He continued production until April 1945, when American forces captured the area. After the war, he worked in reconstruction, helping rebuild German industry. In interviews decades later, he said the March 1943 briefing was the moment he knew Germany had lost. The numbers were undeniable. 5-to-1, 4-to-1, 3-to-1. However you calculated it, Germany was outmatched. Everything after March 1943 was just delaying the inevitable. The factory managers who attended that briefing carried the secret of Germany's defeat for the rest of their lives. Some felt guilty for continuing production when they knew it was futile. Others rationalized that they had no choice, that stopping would mean death. All agreed that the numbers revealed in March 1943 should have prompted Germany to seek peace. But Hitler couldn't accept defeat, and no one could force him to face reality. So the war continued for 2 more years, consuming millions more lives, destroying what remained of German cities, all in service of a cause that was mathematically impossible. The lesson was clear to anyone who understood production. Wars aren't won by courage alone. They're won by factories, by production lines that never stop, by workers who build weapons faster than the enemy can destroy them, by industrial systems that can scale production to meet any demand. America had that system. Germany didn't. And once the numbers were clear, Once German officials saw how vastly they were outmatched, the war's outcome was determined. Everything else was just time and casualties. Karl Friedag, sitting in that conference room in March 1943, understood he was witnessing the death of Germany's hopes. The numbers on Speer's report were more devastating than any military defeat. They represented something Germany couldn't overcome through tactics or courage or determination. They represented industrial reality. And industrial reality was that America could build 5 planes for every German plane, 5 tanks for every German tank, and would keep building until Germany was buried under an avalanche of production. That was the truth. That was what Speer showed them. And that was why, even though Germany fought for 2 more years, the war was over the moment those numbers were revealed. The rest was just mathematics playing out, production gaps becoming gaps in the sky, on the ground, at sea. Germany built 8,000 planes while America built 50,000. And that difference, more than any battle or any strategy, decided the war's outcome. Production won. Everything else was commentary.